Emily was a 5-year-old girl who loved spending time with her mom, Mary. Their life wasn't fancy, but it was filled with love. Mary always made Emily feel special. She cooked Emily's favorite meals, helped her with schoolwork, and read her bedtime stories every single night. But one day everything changed. It started as an ordinary morning. Emily went to school, happy and carefree, not knowing it would be the last time she'd see her mom. That afternoon, the school principal came into Emily's classroom. Her serious face and quiet voice made Emily feel nervous. Something wasn't right. Emily was taken to the principal's office, where her dad, Tom, was waiting. He stood by the window, his hands in his pockets, looking outside. When Emily came in, he turned to her slowly and took a deep breath. "Emily," he said, his voice heavy. "Your mom. She had an accident. She's gone." The words felt like a sharp pain in Emily's chest. She looked at her dad, confused. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaking. Tom didn't look at her. "She's gone, Emily. She's not coming back," he said quietly. Tears rolled down Emily's cheeks, but her dad didn't hug her or try to make her feel better. He just stood there as if he didn't know what to do. That night, the house felt empty and lonely. Emily sat on the couch, holding a pillow tightly. Tom walked in, looked at her for a moment and said, "You need to be strong, Emily. Things are different now. We have to move on." Then he walked away, leaving her alone with her sadness. Have you ever faced a moment that changed everything? Emily's story shows us how we can keep going even when life feels hard. Keep watching to see what happens next. The first time Clara visited Emily after Mary's death, her heart broke at the sight of the little girl. Emily looked smaller, thinner, and had a lost look in her eyes. The house, once warm and full of life when Mary was around, now felt cold and untidy. Clara knew losing her daughter Mary was painful, but what worried her most was the environment Emily was living in. As always, Tom seemed distant. He gave Clara a quick nod and disappeared into his room, leaving her and Emily alone in the living room. "How are you, sweetheart?" Clara asked softly, sitting beside Emily on the couch. The little girl shrugged, her gaze fixed on the floor. "I'm fine, Grandma," she mumbled, but her voice was far from convincing. Clara held Emily's hand and noticed how cold it was. "Are you eating well?" "You look so thin," she asked gently, her voice filled with worry. Emily only nodded, but the heavy silence that followed told Clara something wasn't right. In the days that followed, Clara began visiting Emily more often, hoping to cheer her up or learn more about her life with Tom. But each visit made her more concerned. Emily grew quieter, and her behavior showed signs of anxiety. Tom, on the other hand, became irritated with Clara's frequent visits. "She's fine, Clara. You don't need to keep coming here all the time," he snapped one day, slamming the door behind her. Clara ignored his words. Deep down, she knew Emily needed her now more than ever. One day, during a visit, Clara found Emily sitting on the kitchen floor, eating a sandwich made of dry bread. "Why are you eating this? Didn't your dad make you dinner?" Clara asked, shocked. Emily looked up with teary eyes. "He said he didn't have time," she whispered. Clara felt a surge of anger and sadness. How could Tom neglect his daughter like this? Emily needed more care and love than he was giving. That night, alone in her small house, Clara thought long and hard about what to do. The image of Emily, thin and lonely, haunted her. "She's just a child. I can't leave her like this," she whispered to herself. But the decision wasn't easy. Clara lived on a small pension as a retiree, and Tom had more resources than she did. Still, she couldn't ignore the signs of neglect. In a conversation with a close friend, Clara admitted, "I know he's her father, but that doesn't mean he's taking care of her. She needs someone who truly loves and cares for her." Determined, Clara went to see a lawyer to learn her options. The legal process sounded difficult and overwhelming, but Clara knew it was Emily's best chance at a better life. That day, as Clara hugged Emily goodbye, she whispered, "I'm going to take care of you, my love. I promise I'll do whatever it takes." Tears filled her eyes as Emily hugged her back. Emily didn't fully understand what her grandmother meant, but for the first time in weeks, she felt like someone truly cared. When Tom discovered Clara had filed for custody, it was purely by accident. After a long day at work, he came home to find an official letter sitting on the kitchen table. He opened it, barely paying attention, until he saw what it was about. As Tom read the letter, his expression darkened. "How dare she?" he muttered, crumpling the paper in his hands. Without a word, he stormed upstairs to his bedroom, where he stayed for hours, consumed by anger and frustration. The next day, Tom showed up at Clara's house without warning. He pounded on the door until she opened it. Then, without waiting for an invitation, he barged in. "What is this? You think you can just take my daughter away from me?" he shouted, his voice sharp and furious. Clara stood her ground. "Tom, I have no choice," she said firmly. "Emily needs someone who loves her, someone who truly cares for her. You're not giving her that." Tom's anger only grew. He pointed a finger at Clara, yelling, "If you think you'll win, you're wrong." After realizing that his threats wouldn't work, Tom changed his strategy. Over the next few days, he began acting differently. "Do you want to go to the mall tomorrow? We can buy some things for you," he asked Emily one evening, forcing a smile. Emily, unsure of his sudden kindness, nodded hesitantly. It felt strange to see her dad trying to be nice, and she didn't know how to respond. Tom bought her expensive toys, new clothes, and even took her on fun outings. During one of these trips, he said, "See how much fun we're having? I'm your dad, Emily. We're family. We don't need anyone else." Though Emily enjoyed the attention, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. His behavior seemed fake, more like he was putting on a show than genuinely trying to be loving. Tom didn't stop there. During dinner one night, he said casually, "You know, your grandma is getting old. Taking care of a child like you must be very hard for her." Emily looked at him, confused, but said nothing. She could tell he was trying to make her doubt Clara, which only made her feel more uncomfortable. Tom even went as far as making up lies about Clara. One evening, while Emily was in her room, he called a friend. "She doesn't have money," he whispered. "Her house is falling apart. No one in their right mind would give custody of a child to her." Emily, meanwhile, began noticing how strange her dad's behavior was. The coldness she had once felt from him hadn't disappeared. It was still there, hidden under a fake layer of kindness. It felt like he was wearing different masks, changing them as needed. Emily didn't fully understand what was going on, but she knew something was off. One cold, quiet night, Emily lay in bed, unable to sleep. The tension in the house had grown heavier since Tom's sudden change in behavior. The shopping trips, forced smiles, and unexpected outings left her feeling uneasy. As she stared at the ceiling, she heard muffled voices coming from the living room. It was strange for her dad to have visitors, especially this late. Curious, and with her heart racing, Emily slipped out of bed and tiptoed to the top of the stairs. She heard her dad's voice, low but urgent, as if he didn't want anyone to overhear. Emily sat on the steps, leaning her head to listen more closely. "I need this to look real. Do you understand?" Tom said. The other voice, one Emily didn't recognize, replied, but she couldn't make out the words. "If Clara wins custody, I'm done for," Tom continued, his words sending chills down Emily's spine. "She can't take Emily. I can't lose this, the money that comes with her." Emily felt her stomach drop. Money? What was he talking about? She struggled to stay quiet, her heart racing. "I've already started spreading stories about her being unstable," Tom said, now sounding more confident. "But I need your help with the documents. It has to look like she's completely unfit to take care of a child. She's old, frail, and Emily will suffer if she stays with her." There was a pause, then Tom let out a cold, humorless laugh. "No one's going to believe I'm the problem. I'm her father, after all." Tears streamed down Emily's face. Those words felt like a knife to her heart. She had always known her dad was distant, but she never imagined he could be so manipulative. For a moment, she thought about running downstairs to confront him, but fear held her back. What if he lied? What if he twisted her words? She needed to be smart. Carefully, Emily retreated to her room, closing the door softly. She sat on her bed, hugging her knees, her mind racing. Suddenly, everything made sense. The gifts, the outings, the forced smiles. It was all part of a plan to trick her and everyone else. "He doesn't care about me," she whispered through her tears. "He only cares about himself." That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Tom's words kept echoing in her mind. She thought about her grandmother Clara, the way she always tried to make her feel loved even though she didn't have much. Emily remembered Clara's warm hug and her promise to protect her. Now Emily knew she had to do something. She had to help her grandmother, but the idea of standing up to her father terrified her. The next morning, the house was quiet as always. Tom acted like nothing had happened. He served breakfast in his usual cold, distant way. "Did you sleep well, Emily?" he asked, not even looking at her. Emily nodded, hiding the storm of emotions inside her. Tom didn't seem to notice that she had discovered his lies. As Emily got ready for school, she paused at the door. She glanced at her father, who was sitting on the couch, completely absorbed in his phone. A mix of sadness and anger filled her. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair that Clara, the only person who truly loved her, had to fight so many lies. With a heavy heart, Emily made up her mind. She would tell the truth about what she had overheard, no matter how scared she felt. The day of the custody hearing arrived under a gray sky. The weather seemed to match the weight Emily felt in her heart. She had barely slept, knowing she would have to expose her father's lies. Beside her, Clara, dressed simply but with dignity, held Emily's hand firmly as they walked into the courthouse. In contrast, Tom was impeccably dressed, accompanied by his lawyer. He looked confident, his smile rehearsed and fake, but Emily knew the truth behind his mask. And today, she was determined to reveal it. The air in the room was heavy. Clara sat beside Emily, who clung to her grandmother's arm as if it could give her the strength she needed. On the other side of the courtroom, Tom sat stiffly, casting quick glances at the judge and the crowd. When his lawyer stood to speak, the room fell silent. "Your Honor," the lawyer began, "my client, Tom, is a devoted father who has taken on all responsibilities since the tragic loss of his wife. He provides his daughter Emily with a stable and secure home, unlike Mrs. Clara, who unfortunately lacks the resources to care for her granddaughter." Each word felt like a dagger to Clara's heart, but she kept her head high. When it was her turn, she stood with dignity. "Your Honor," she said, her voice steady, "I love my granddaughter more than anything in this world. I may not have wealth, but I have something far more valuable: love, dedication, and the will to protect her. Since my daughter's passing, Emily has lived in a house filled with coldness and neglect. She deserves a home where she feels safe and loved." Tom's lawyer was quick to respond. "With all due respect, Your Honor, Mrs. Clara is elderly and does not have the financial or physical means to care for Emily. Furthermore, we have evidence that she has interfered with the relationship between father and daughter." Sensing an opportunity, Tom rose to speak. "I only want what's best for my daughter," he said, his voice steady and his expression so sincere it almost fooled the room. "I've done everything I could for her. It's hard to see that my mother-in-law doesn't trust me as a father." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. The adults were arguing about what was best for her, but no one was asking what she thought or listening to the truth. She couldn't sit silently anymore. Her hands trembling, she stood up. "Daddy is lying," she said, her voice small but loud enough to silence the courtroom. The judge looked at her, surprised but kind. "Emily, do you want to say something?" she asked gently. Tom's eyes widened in shock. "Emily, sit down. Don't say things you don't understand," he ordered, his voice sharp. But the judge raised her hand, signaling for him to stop. "Let her speak," she said firmly. Emily took a deep breath, trying to hold back her tears. Her voice shook as she began. "He doesn't care about me," she said, looking directly at the judge. "He never did. All he wants is the insurance money, the money that was meant for me after my mom died." The courtroom was silent. Even Tom's lawyer seemed unsure of what to do. "I heard him talking on the phone," Emily continued, her voice growing stronger with every word. "He said he needed to get Mom out of the way because she controlled the insurance money. He sabotaged her car. He made it break on purpose. He's the reason she's gone." Tears streamed down her face as she went on. "After Mom died, he said things would get better, but they didn't. He left me alone, treated me badly, and now he's pretending to care so he can take the money. He wants to get rid of me, too. I heard him say it." Tom jumped to his feet, his face red with anger. "This is nonsense. She's confused. She's just a child," he shouted. But the judge silenced him with a stern look. "Enough, Mr. Tom," she said firmly. She turned back to Emily, her expression serious. "Emily, these are very serious accusations. Are you sure about what you're saying?" Emily nodded quickly. "I heard him say it," she insisted. "He was on the phone laughing. He said he didn't have to worry about Mom anymore, that everything was taken care of. And now he wants to do the same to me. He wants to take everything that was meant for me." What will the judge decide after Emily's brave testimony? Stay with us to uncover the final judgment in this tale of truth and courage. Emily's words hit the courtroom like a mighty storm, shaking everyone to the core. The judge sat silently for a moment, her face stern as she looked at Tom with clear disapproval. "These allegations will be investigated immediately," she declared, her voice firm. Then she called for a short recess. Tom slumped into his chair, his confidence gone, while Clara pulled Emily into a tight embrace. "You were so brave, my child," Clara whispered, tears running down her face. "I'm so proud of you." As the courtroom emptied for the break, Emily felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief washed over her. She had finally told the truth. But she also felt a deep sadness. Exposing her father's lies had been one of the hardest things she had ever done. Yet for the first time in what felt like forever, she sensed that justice, not just for herself but also for her late mother, might be within reach. When the court resumed, the atmosphere was heavier than before. Tom, who earlier had exuded confidence, now sat with his head down, staring at the table. He refused to look up or meet anyone's eyes. Meanwhile, Emily sat beside Clara, holding her grandmother's hand tightly. Clara's firm grip was a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. The judge re-entered the courtroom, and silence fell like a heavy blanket. She cleared her throat before speaking. "After listening to the testimonies and considering the gravity of the accusations," she began, "I have decided that immediate action is necessary to ensure justice and protect the child involved." Emily glanced at Clara, trying to gauge what might happen next, while Tom sat frozen in place, his face pale. "Mr. Tom," the judge continued, her tone steady, "due to the serious nature of these allegations, including potential criminal action surrounding the car accident that led to your wife's death, I am ordering your immediate detention. This measure is to safeguard the integrity of the investigation. Additionally, Emily will be placed under the temporary care of her grandmother, Clara, until a final decision is made." The judge's words echoed across the room, followed by murmurs of surprise and shock. Tom shot to his feet, his face flushed with anger. "This is outrageous. I'm her father. This isn't fair," he yelled. Before he could say more, a court officer stepped forward and gently but firmly restrained him. As he was escorted out, Tom turned back to look at Emily one last time. His expression was a mix of desperation and something darker. Emily, however, refused to meet his gaze. She gripped Clara's hand even tighter, drawing strength from her grandmother's quiet presence. Watching her father being led away was a moment filled with conflicting emotions for Emily. On one hand, she felt a sense of justice. Finally, the lies and betrayal were being uncovered. But on the other hand, she couldn't ignore the sadness in her heart. Despite everything, he was still her father, and the thought of him committing such terrible acts was almost too much to bear. Clara, sensing the storm of emotions swirling inside her granddaughter, knelt down and looked her in the eyes. "You were incredibly brave today, Emily," she said, her voice soft and full of love. "I know this is hard, but you did what was right. And because of that, you've taken the first step toward healing." The ride back to Clara's home was quiet. Emily stared out the window, watching the world pass by in a blur of colors and lights. When they finally arrived, Clara led Emily inside the small but cozy house. It wasn't fancy, but it felt safe, something Emily hadn't felt in a long time. Clara showed her to a little room she had prepared. There was a soft quilt on the bed and an old lamp that cast warm, comforting shadows on the walls. "It's not much," Clara said gently as she helped Emily settle in. "But I'll do everything I can to make sure you feel safe and loved here." Emily nodded, offering a shy smile for the first time in weeks. For the first time in so long, she felt free to cry without fear of punishment. Clara sat beside her on the bed, gently running her hand through Emily's hair. "It's okay, my dear," Clara whispered, her voice soft and comforting. "You're safe now. We'll get through this together." In that moment, Emily began to believe that it was possible. The days that followed were filled with a mixture of relief and adjustment. Without Tom around, Emily felt lighter, as though a heavy weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Yet, at times, memories of the past still haunted her. She would wake up in the middle of the night, her heart racing as she remembered the cold look Tom had given her in the courtroom. Other times, the warmth of her mother's voice in her memory would leave an aching emptiness inside her. Clara worked hard to create a sense of normalcy for Emily. She cooked simple meals, helped with homework, and read bedtime stories, just like Emily's mother, Sarah, used to do. "This was one of your mom's favorite stories," Clara said one night, reading from an old, worn book. Emily smiled, feeling a deeper connection to her mother through the small stories Clara shared. But even though they were relieved, both Clara and Emily knew this was just the beginning of a long journey. The court's final decision still loomed ahead, and the fear that Tom might try to twist the situation in his favor hung over them like a dark cloud. "We'll keep fighting," Clara said one afternoon as she made tea in their small kitchen. "You deserve a life filled with love and peace." Emily looked at her grandmother, her eyes filled with new determination. "I know, Grandma. And I'll do my part too." In that moment, Emily realized something no one could ever take away: the courage to fight for herself and the hope that better days were on the horizon. The weeks after the initial hearing felt like a long, drawn-out battle. Clara's home had become a safe haven for Emily, but both knew the struggle was far from over. Every letter from the court and every update on the investigation left Clara feeling anxious. Emily, on the other hand, tried to stay focused on school and the small routines Clara had set up for her. But beneath it all, a constant sense of uncertainty gnawed at her. She knew that soon her life would be decided. The day of the final hearing arrived with a bright morning, but Emily's heart was heavy with worry. The courtroom felt more charged than ever before. This time Tom was there, but in handcuffs, surrounded by 2 officers. He looked worn out, but still wore the same arrogant attitude. When their eyes briefly met, Emily felt a shiver run down her spine, quickly turning her gaze away. Clara sat beside her, her face serious and focused. She knew this was the most important moment of their lives. Tom's lawyer seemed uneasy, as though he could feel the weight of the situation and knew the odds weren't in his favor. Clara's attorney, a volunteer who had helped guide her through the legal process, was calm but watchful, ready to respond to anything Tom's lawyer might say. The judge entered the room, and a heavy silence filled the space. "We are here to finalize the custody case concerning the minor, Emily, and to address the criminal charges against Mr. Tom," the judge said, her tone commanding the full attention of everyone in the room. She reviewed the documents before turning to the lawyers. "Present your final arguments," she instructed. Tom's lawyer stood up first, making one last attempt to salvage his client's reputation. "Your Honor, my client is a father who has made mistakes, as we all do. But he loves his daughter deeply and wishes for a second chance to prove he can be a good parent." The lawyer occasionally glanced at Tom, trying to make him appear regretful. But Clara's breathing quickened as the lawyer continued. "Furthermore, the allegations against Tom lack concrete evidence. There are no direct proofs that he sabotaged the car of Emily's mother. We cannot make such a serious decision based on mere assumptions." When it was Clara's turn, she stood tall, her presence full of dignity as someone fighting for the truth. Her lawyer presented the evidence gathered during the investigation. "Your Honor, the life insurance mentioned by Emily was indeed intended for her. Financial records show that Tom tried to change the beneficiary just days after Emily's mother passed away. A highly suspicious act," the lawyer said. Additionally, inspections of the car revealed signs of tampering. Then it was Emily's turn. She took a deep breath before standing, and the entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. "I don't want to stay with my father," Emily began, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "He never treated me well. He never cared about me or my mother. All he wanted was the money. He did it. He sabotaged the car. He knew my mother was going to die." Emily looked at the judge, tears streaming down her face. "I heard him talking about it on the phone. He said it was the only way to get the insurance money. He said I was just a problem to him, and that he wanted to get rid of me too." Her words pierced the silence, leaving even Tom's lawyer speechless. The judge paused for a long moment before speaking again. "These accusations are extremely serious. After considering the testimonies and the evidence presented, this court concludes that Tom acted negligently and possibly criminally. Tom tried to speak, but the officers quickly restrained him. The judge continued, "As for Emily's custody, I hereby grant permanent guardianship to Clara. She has demonstrated that she is the most suitable person to provide Emily with the safe and loving home she deserves." The judge's words felt like a weight lifted from Emily's shoulders. Clara hugged her tightly, both of them crying together. "It's over, my love," Clara whispered. "You're safe now." As Tom was escorted out of the courtroom, he cast one last glance at Emily, but this time, she didn't look away. For the first time, she felt stronger than him. Justice had been served, and despite all the hardships, she and Clara now had the chance to begin anew. The days after the court's decision brought a peace that Emily hadn't felt in a long time. She and Clara returned to the small house, but this time, everything felt different. The house, though simple, now felt like a sanctuary. Clara worked hard to make Emily feel safe. She cleaned and reorganized the house, turning a small room into a cozy space for her granddaughter. The walls were painted in soft colors, adorned with drawings that showed the carefree childhood Emily truly deserved. On the desk, Clara placed a framed photo of Sarah, Emily's mother, smiling warmly, just like Emily remembered. "So you'll never forget how much she loved you," Clara said gently. Clara gently placed a comforting hand on Emily's shoulder. Though still carrying the weight of past traumas, Emily slowly began to open up to this new chapter of her life. She started attending a new school, where she made friends who welcomed her with kindness and curiosity. "You're Clara's granddaughter, right? She's so sweet," one classmate remarked. Emily smiled, feeling a flicker of pride at the mention of her grandmother. At home, the days were filled with simple yet precious moments. Clara made sure to cook warm meals and sit at the table with Emily, asking about her day. At night, she continued the bedtime story tradition that Sarah, Emily's mother, had started. "This was one of your mom's favorite stories," Clara would say as she read from an old book. Emily listened intently, clutching a teddy bear her mother had given her years ago. One afternoon, while they were tidying the front garden, Emily asked, "Grandma, do you think Mom can see us?" Clara paused, wiping her forehead with her hand. "I believe she can, sweetheart. And I think she's very proud of you. You've been so brave." Emily smiled, though her eyes filled with tears. Before the tears could fall, Clara embraced her. "We're together now, and that's what matters," her grandmother reassured her. The most memorable moment came when Clara decided to take Emily to a park Sarah used to visit with her daughter. It was a simple place with tall trees and an old swing, but to Emily, it felt magical. "Your mom loved coming here," Clara said. "She said it was the place where she felt most connected to life." As Emily ran across the grassy field laughing for the first time in ages, Clara sat on a nearby bench, watching her with a mix of joy and relief. The hardships they had endured now felt distant, almost like a nightmare that was finally over. When Emily ran back to her breathless and smiling, Clara cupped her face with both hands. "You're my strong girl. Never forget that," she said, planting a gentle kiss on Emily's forehead. Emily looked up at Clara and, with the innocence of a child beginning to understand the value of love and resilience, replied, "You're strong too, Grandma. Stronger than anyone I know." Clara smiled, her heart swelling with warmth. The two sat together on the grass, gazing at the sky, where clouds drifted slowly as if dancing in harmony with the wind. Rebuilding their lives wouldn't be easy, but both were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Emily knew she had lost so much, but she had also gained something precious, the certainty that love could heal even the deepest wounds. And Clara, despite her age and the obstacles they'd faced, felt renewed, because in the end, having Emily by her side was all that mattered. As the days passed, Emily and Clara grew even closer. Together they began to build a life full of warmth, love, and hope. While the scars of the past would always remain, they found solace in the knowledge that they had each other. Emily had found her strength, and Clara had found new purpose in being the guiding light for her granddaughter. They knew their journey wasn't over, but as they faced the future, they did so with courage in their hearts and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Love had healed their wounds, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Have you ever found strength in the love of family? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories like this one.